I see a first question that says, you all have been through so much with your little ones and through the experiences you've gained on your respective journeys. What advice would you give to parents that have recently had a child diagnosed with CHD? Wants to feel that. So many different pieces of wisdom I'm sure everybody has.
I think I would just say definitely, the first thing I did was kind of go to social media and look for support groups. And I'm based in Los Angeles. And so we have a really great LA Heart Moms on Facebook. And that's kind of where I turned to because I knew that, they could provide me with a wealth of information. And even today, 4 years later, if we go for a cardiology appointment and something pops up that I'm not really aware of, I know that I can just post in that group and ask, like, have you dealt with this? Can you provide any, help or advice? And so that's probably what I would say is my number one piece of advice is really just to find your support group, whether that be on social media or if you're, for lack of a better word, but not lucky enough to know someone in person that also has a child with CHD. But that's what I would say. Just find your support group.
I totally agree. The same thing I did. I reached out on social media. There's a New York Heart Moms group, and there's such a large community of people and patients who have gone through the same thing you're going to. They can recommend, surgeons and hospitals and what works for them, as well as organizations. There's a lot of great organizations out there like Mended Little Hearts and Children's Heart Foundation that are there to help guide you through this scary process and to help know that you're not alone. And that really helped my husband and I, my son was diagnosed when he was 20 weeks. So luckily we had time to kind of prepare and reach out to this community of people who have been there already to help guide us. And that really helped to know that other people had been through it as well.
I think that's awesome. And I would echo that as well. You would not believe what a supportive system the CHD community is. And so a lot of times when you first get that diagnosis, one of the biggest things that you feel is alone. And a lot of people around you will want to understand and they'll want to help and they'll want to be there, but they might not know how. And it's not that they don't care. It's just that they maybe haven't been there. And so finding that network and that support group who has been there is really nice because you have a little bit of a silent understanding amongst you. The other thing that I think is really, really helpful for new moms is write things down. You're going to have thoughts that come up kind of left and right. They'll be swimming all over the place, and your head will be swimming, if I'm being honest at first, because you're going to have a lot of information to mull over. And so if you write it down, you can revisit it, you can bring it to your doctor, ask lots of questions, and give yourself permission to feel all the emotions that you're going to feel, because that it is a hard process. It's a very wonderful process because there's a lot of beauty that comes through it, but it's a very hard process as well. And you're going to feel a lot of things. So give yourself permission to feel.
My advice would be just to follow your instinct. And that's been a huge part of my journey. When I had my son, he wasn't diagnosed until he was around 18 months. And when we finally found out, then when we finally found out that he had a heart defect, it was just like a huge shocker. I had no idea. And we kind of got thrown into the whole mix. And I would just say, just do the best you can. That's all we can ever do. Be a good advocate for your children. Make sure you get them the best help that you can. Seek out the best specialists that you can. Don't just settle for like an in-state doctor. I learned a lot about the way doctors and surgeons work, and just because they're local doesn't mean they're good. So you want to figure out what heart defect your child has and seek out a specialist that can really do well at the type of surgery your child needs help with. And it sounds really scary to have to travel out of state for a surgery, but my son had 2 surgeries, and during our first one, we had his surgery done in state, and there's nothing wrong with the hospital local to us. They just didn't have a lot of experience in his defect. And so I started reading millions and millions and millions, and I mean probably every single medical journal article that I could find with my son's heart defect. And I finally came across a cardiothoracic surgeon that specifically was listed on every single medical journal for his type of defect. And I found his email on that journal. And the crazy thing is, it just kind of fell into place to get the help I needed. I emailed that surgeon, and within the same day, maybe 3 to 4 hours later, I heard back, and we sent our son's medical records and flew all the way to Chicago a couple months later. So that's my biggest piece of advice, is follow your heart, do the best you can. And I feel like just be a good advocate for your kid. So it looks like our next question was from Amy Lee, and it's for friends and family who want to help and be a part of the journey. What can they do to best support you? Who wants to go first? Do you want to go, Nisha?
Yeah, for me, I don't know about you ladies, but I have other kids in addition to my heart warrior. So I have my daughter, my heart warrior's 4, but I had twin boys that were only 3 at the time. And so for me, it was super overwhelming because I had to, do a lot of what you mentioned, Carli. I'm in Los Angeles, but I was going, to San Diego and other parts of the state to kind of research doctors and figure out who was going to be my daughter's cardiothoracic surgeon. And so I often felt like I was just leaving behind, my 2 boys. And when my daughter, she's had 3 open heart surgeries, and there's been so many months where I would just have to, my boys would stay with grandma and grandpa to take care of them. And so I think that what helped us was a lot of our family would always say, like, can we pick up the boys and take them to the park? Or can we take them, to dinner? Can we take them on a play date? So just helping me with my boys and to make sure that they were still thriving and, not feeling kind of left out because mom and dad were gone for a long time at the hospital with sister. And so I think, if there's other kids involved, maybe just offer to take them for a play date, or, send them a little coloring book, or just something. Little things really mean the most when you're going through such a hard time.
I have a similar story. So we're in New York, and for my son, my 4-year-old son's 3rd open heart surgery, we traveled cross country to California, myself, my husband, and my son. And I have a 6-year-old son who is back at home in New York. He's in kindergarten, and he stayed with the grandparents. And our family was just such a strong support, knowing that he was safe, he was with them, he was happy. It just helped us focus on our younger son during his surgery. And then obviously we were able to FaceTime with him and hear about everything he was doing and see that he was fine. And having that family support was just so helpful. And we also had lots of other family and friends, sending dinner, simple things like dinner so you don't have to think about it. Honestly, that was one of the biggest helps, because when, you're in the hospital and trying to listen on rounds and worried about your son and or your heart warrior, simple things like having food taken care of was really just a help. So you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to think about it.
I would say that one of the biggest things that my daughter's had 8 open heart surgeries, and they've been kind of over the course of her life, kind of all throughout. So we've hit a little bit of every stage of the game in terms of, what to expect. One of the biggest. And one thing that never gets old is people sending a text, sending a card, dropping something off at the door. And just that little tiny bit of, hey, I'm thinking of you is great. I think it's really important for people to understand, or it's really helpful if they understand that you might not be able to get back to them. And because not because you don't want to, or because you don't care that they sent a message, because we care very, very much when we get that little, hey, how's it going? I'm thinking of you. But we might not have the time because we're caught up in a little bit of chaos. One thing I can say, when there's older kids, my daughter, it's very natural to think our support system when my daughter was little would check in with me because I'm the mom. Hey, how's your daughter doing? How are things going? So on and so forth. But as she got bigger, um, there's a transition that takes place where people probably don't think of it because they're used to checking in with the mom, but it's good to check in with the kiddo as well, and say, hey, I'm thinking of you, to them too, because that's what we would want, as if we're a 12-year-old, a 15-year-old, an 18-year-old, a 26-year-old, we would want to be checked in with as well and just hear that personally. And so remember, the heart warrior in your check-ins. And then the other thing I would say is take away the ask. I think it's human nature for us to be like, let me know if you need anything. But I'll be completely honest, when you're going through a health crisis, you don't even know what you need. People say, let me know if you need anything, but you're kind of spinning your wheels and going through the motions, and you're on autopilot a lot, just accomplishing everything you need to accomplish for the day. And so if somebody removes that ask and, like Melanie said, puts dinner at your door and drops it off to you, that's wonderful. That's, oh my goodness, I don't have to worry about cooking. The one thing I'll say though, and not to be picky because beggars can't be choosers, because we love all the support, but if you do make dinner for a heart family, try to think about like sodium conscious, because a lot of kiddos can't have salt. So for heart family, try to think
Okay,
about like
so
sodium conscious.
I would say one of the most helpful things, my son's heart journey was a little different. He had a lot of eating troubles. And so the most stressful time for me was meal times. And it would create so much anxiety that it was just a super, super difficult thing to go through, because part of his aorta was actually wrapped around his trachea and his esophagus. So the whole way that we learned he had a heart defect is he would projectile vomit with like a very small amount of food. So he was only able to eat just a teeny, teeny bit of food at once, without projectile vomiting. And it kind of killed eating time. We hated to eat because we felt guilty because my son didn't understand why he couldn't eat a full meal. And it was just a difficult time. We stopped going out. We stopped going to restaurants because it was so stressful that it was hard to explain to people, and it was scary for us. And if it was scary for us, imagine what it was like for people that had never witnessed that kind of thing before. So we had family members that would come and feed him. I learned a lot of different techniques that were helpful with the whole eating situations, but we just had to step away. We had to take a break. Sometimes somebody else had to feed him. We learned to make eating fun and less about the food at the time. And I think another huge thing is what Jenny said, where don't ask, just help, And I think so many times people give you space because they just think you need space. But really, you just kind of want a friend. You want somebody's shoulder to cry on. You just want to know that they care and that they're there for you. And I think people get nervous because they don't know what to say. But I think saying something is always better than saying nothing. And I would just say, yeah, you just need to be there for that person and see what you can do to take some pressure off. Maybe bring some meals, maybe give a nice book or offer to take whoever your friend is or your family member out and kind of take turns and give them a little something fun to look forward to, or maybe even invite the whole family to go to the zoo or something, because just because your child is diagnosed with a heart defect doesn't mean you want to stop living. You still want to go out and have fun and be invited to things and do things. So I would just say keep talking, keep including, keep listening, and don't ask, just help. That's my advice. Let me look and see what the next question we have is. Okay, the next question is from, I think it's Raylan. My son had his first open heart surgery last October. He is 7 months old now. When he gets older, I know he will have questions. How were you able to explain their heart journey without causing any fear or anxiety? Let's start with Nisha again.
This is actually a good question, because it's something that I still struggle with. I mean, I'm a fairly new heart mom still. My daughter barely turned 4. And she's at this stage where she's very like aware of her body and, all of the scars on her chest. Right now it looks, because she has such a tiny little body, it just looks heartbreaking. She has so many. She has 3 different zipper lines, and then she also has other, from her chest tubes, other little, so it's just, her stomach is like, a little battlefield. And so I just, when I see her kind of opening her shirt and looking down there, I just always say, you're so beautiful. Isn't that pretty? Isn't that brave? And I just use, she's only 4, so her vocabulary is still limited at this point. And so I just make it very normal, and I don't, try and make anything complicated. I don't say, anything about surgeries or anything like that. I mean, of course, she's well aware when we go to the hospital, like she understands. But if I see her, feeling any kind of way, or if I notice that she feels like angst or, sadness about it, I just, I'll just flash a big smile and say, you're so beautiful, you're so brave, you're so special, and just kind of use all those words of reinforcement for her. So she knows that, she's all those things. And so she doesn't, think that she's completely different from everybody else. And, I'd love to hear, Jenny, your advice, because I know your daughter's older. And this is really something that I rack my brain about this every single day. So.
Well, it's kind of one of those funny things, to be completely honest, that we very much just normalized it. So there's like 2 components to it, I guess. One is the scar component, but the other is the surgical journey component. And so just on the scar component itself, we very much normalized that. It was just part of her body when she was little. Every self-portrait she always drew had a scar down the middle. She was my first child. So when my second daughter was born, it was 5 years later. And so when Faith, my oldest, my heart warrior, started drawing pictures of her and her sister, and I would see now a chest that didn't have a scar on it in a photo that I'd seen many, many times, that looked odd to me. I'm like, wait, there's no scar on the chest, because she always drew pictures of herself with the scar. She has always been really comfortable with her scar. And it wasn't until high school. Friends are great, guys. They say things that parents don't say. And so in high school, she'd always been with the same group of kids growing up, but come high school, we're in a smaller town, so different schools come into the mix, and they all join the same high school. And so there were kids who didn't know her heart journey, where everybody else did all the way growing up. And one day she's walking down the hall, she has her scar on her chest. Somebody looks, and her friend says, take a picture, it'll last longer, and she's like, what are you talking about? She's like, they were looking at your scar. And she's like, oh, why? I don't, and so she didn't really think anything of it. And she actually went on to become USA National Miss Maine 2020. She very much wears anything she wants and doesn't really focus too much on that. As far as the surgical journey part itself, there's kind of, it's different for everybody, you know what I mean? And so she's had to face it several times. And I think as moms, we want to make our kids feel no pain. We want to make everything better for them. But there's some things that we really just can't. And when you go through any surgical procedure, there is fear involved, and there is, stress and worry and those sort of things. And they feel that too. And we do what we can to support and to be there for them. And it's a huge deal, believe me, I know. But I think that the thing that helped us the most was just treating it like it would be any other situation. Validation, support, love, we'll get through it together, encouragement. But when she would say, this is awful, this is scary, this sucks, her words, I would say, I know, I'm sorry. Here's what we can do, and let me help you with this. So we kept it practical, even though it was very emotional.
Okay, I'll go next, I guess. So I would say, this is a very hard thing. And my son did have two surgeries. The second one he was older for. But even more than the actual heart surgery itself, it's just like the medical journey that kind of gave him different anxieties. And it's a hard thing to deal with for kids. I just think you want to empower them that what they are going through is it's okay to feel. It's okay to feel scared. It's okay to be worried. But I also think it's important to point out when they get through those hard, scary things, and they're the ones that get through it. You're not the one that's suddenly fixing it. I always told my son, wow, look at how brave you were in such a scary time. And it was so hard. You had to recover, and it took a lot of work. And for him, it was a lot of eating trouble, and he was on thickened liquids for a really, really long time. So, I mean, it's a good way to show them that they can get through anything life throws at them, because they've been through more than most adults. My son has been through more than I have. And I mean, my son, I took him to his pediatrician's office yesterday, and he adores his pediatrician. She's like his buddy, and he trusts her a ton. And she wanted him to do physical therapy for just like a foot issue. And just, there was anxiety. He gets very anxious about that. He gets anxious when we go to the dentist, and he sees medical chairs and lights and things that he doesn't know what's going to happen with them. But I think it's just important, like, to validate their feelings, like, um, and tell them, it's okay to be scared. You've gone through a lot, but we're here for you, and you're going to keep going through life and getting through all these challenges and do an awesome job like you always have done. And that's actually one of the reasons too that I became an author, because I feel like books are such a healing tool for kids. Like, we figured out pretty quickly that if we could find a book, like before my son had his second heart surgery when he was a little older, we found a book that had real people in with doctors and stuff, and explained it in a more calming way. Like, your heart has something a little bit different, but there's a really awesome doctor that we found that's actually going to help make it even better, and stronger. And we're going to help you through this, and it's going to be hard. And that's kind of what the book set up, is conversations with your kids so that they can kind of work through things in their own way. Also, different videos. Like, sometimes when my son knew what to expect, he was less scared for a non-scary procedure. Like, he had a lot of swallow studies. We did practice swallow studies because he had a really scary one that was kind of stressful to him. So something as simple as a swallow study, we would practice at home and just talk about and show videos like, see, it doesn't hurt. You don't have to worry, kind of thing. Obviously, you don't want to pull up a surgery video and show your child, this is what you're going to have done, because that would be very terrifying. It is a very scary thing, but I just would say minimize the worries that aren't going to be hard, like swallow studies, x-rays, CT angiograms, those kind of things. And just tell them you'll be there, and that they're going to get through the very hard things like surgery. And that would be my advice. now I'm going to leave it up to Melanie to finish us off for this question.
Sure. So my son is 4.5. His first two surgeries, he was an infant, 2.5 months, 5 months. So his most recent surgery was obviously a much bigger, different experience because he wasn't aware when he was a baby. It was more my husband and I going through it. So for his most recent open heart surgery, we actually contacted the child life department at the hospital, who helped advise us based on his age, the best appropriate time to start letting him know, and like what to let him know, because he's obviously only 4. He doesn't really understand. So we didn't want to scare him. So in very basic terms, he knows he has a special heart. We were going to travel to see a special doctor. And then once we got there, the child life department helped us explain, the doctor's going to fix something with your heart. Mommy and daddy will be with you. They're going to give you medicine to help you fall asleep. And when you wake up, mommy and daddy will be there. You might see some wires. You might feel, if anything hurts, any boo-boos, you tell us, and we can give you medicine to help it feel better. So definitely, I agree. Knowing what to expect helped a lot with his, I don't know if he was hearing it, but he was definitely uncertain about what was about to happen. So that helped calm him, kind of knowing a little bit what to expect and that we were going to be there with him. We also, for appointments now, he has anxiety. He remembers now what happened. So he's obviously a little nervous. My husband and I both go with him. We tell him they're going to put the stickers on your chest for the EKG. They're going to do an echo with the jelly. And then we always try to, give him something to look forward to after. After we can go to the library and pick out a game, or we can go, to the toy store and get a little present, which is actually something my parents used to do for me when I was younger. I also have a congenital heart defect, and being able to look forward to something special afterwards definitely helped, get through the doctor's visits. And then, so that's for surgeries. And then for scars, he is more aware of his body now. He's 4. He sees he has a scar on his chest. His older brother does not. And that's one of the reasons that inspired me to write this book. I wanted to help explain in a simple way, this is how you got your scar, and your scar is, you're brave because of it, because of what you went through. That's what your scar represents. And then that way, himself and other heart warriors can see there's other kids like them with similar scars, down the chest with the chest tube lines, and make it them realize, it's more common, because it is more common. 1 in 100 children are born with a heart defect. And clearly all of our children were affected by it. And by seeing all of these books, they'll see characters with scars like theirs, and hopefully feel less alone, and calm their anxiety. Clearly all of our children.
Okay, so the next question it's from, let me check, hold on. What was the most difficult part of getting started writing a children's book? And I'll just go ahead and answer this since I'm talking right now. So the most difficult part of writing a children's book for me was just kind of getting the courage to jump in, because I had stories pre-written, and I had been coming up with ideas for quite some time, but I was just nervous to kind of jump in and take the lunge forward. I was also didn't know what I was going to do illustration wise. I didn't know how I would format my book. And I just kind of decided, enough excuses. My husband bought me an iPad, and he turned me on to a really cool app called Procreate, where you can draw on your iPad and upload it into your book formatting. And I used YouTube constantly to kind of figure out what the heck I was doing. And I still use YouTube, and I just search everything I want to find out. And when I don't know how to do something as far as my book goes, I just kind of figure it out. And I'm a self-published author, so I've done all of it myself. Some self-published authors get help with formatting or whatever, but I just decided, you know what, I'm going to just do it all. So I wrote my books, I illustrated my books, I put all the books together and formatted them, and then I published my books. And it's been awesome. It's been exciting. I feel blessed to write a book for all these amazing warriors. And I'm so excited that that I've given myself the opportunity. It makes me feel proud. And I would say, if you want to do it, just do it. Don't let yourself have any excuses, and just jump in. Okay, Nisha's next.
For me, it was a couple of things. I think the hardest part for me is that, I'm a full-time journalist. And so I always knew that I wanted to write a book. I didn't know what it was going to be about until my daughter was born. And then she, of course, just inspired me. And so one, it was just trying to find the time, because I had 3 little kids, plus a full-time job, plus a husband, and, everything else that we all have to deal with in life. And so it just always wasn't the right time. I just was like, there's no way I can add writing a book, to, or even figuring out how to write a book to my schedule. And it wasn't really until like the pandemic, where I was forced to work at home, and I kind of had a little more time because I wasn't doing like a 2-hour commute to and from a job, that I was able to kind of like squeeze it in late at night, early in the morning. And then also, like what Carli said, I didn't know where to begin. Like, I'm a journalist. I have lots of years of experience as a writer, but writing a children's book is completely different. And I didn't know what to do or where to go. And so I actually co-wrote Rainbows and Storms, my book, with just so happened to be my next door neighbor. We both just, by the grace of God, happened to be heart moms. And so for me, being a team with her really kind of made the process easier because we tackled it together. We wrote the story together. Our illustrations were done by one of my co-authors' former students, because she's an educator. And so that just, worked out well. And us too, we use, Google, YouTube a lot. We are in different author groups on social media where we kind of just ask questions. If you've not done it before, it is very overwhelming, but my advice is just really, if you have a story in your heart or in your mind, to really just, believe in yourself, even if it takes you, 5 years or whatever time frame it may be, just start plugging away at it. And before you know it, the ball will start rolling, and you can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. And I would really love to see other children's books about congenital heart disease and disabilities and really everything. I also love reading. My children love reading. And I think it's one of the most important things for our kids to love to do. And so yeah, that would be my advice. And that was kind of the hardest thing for me. So just get started, even if you feel like you're not making progress, you probably are.
I agree. I'm very similar. I always loved reading. I work in academic and medical publishing, and I always, I always thought it would have been so amazing to write my own book, and I kept pushing it off. I had 2 young boys, and during the pandemic, we had scheduled my younger son's 3rd surgery, and we always refer to his scars, his super scars. So finally, I was like, I want to write a book about his super scar. You really, drive home to show him how proud we are of him, how proud he should be of his scar, and to show that there are kids like his in books. He loves reading. He started reading also, and I wanted him to see representation of himself in books. So finally I said, okay, let me just sit down and do it. So I wrote out the story. I hired a freelance illustrator. Like you said, there's so many great resources online. I self-published, and they make it, they have lots of guides to make it easy for you to follow the template and tell you what to do next. And they made it much more accessible to self-publish than, it used to be. So I really just, my son's upcoming surgery was the motivation to just sit down and do it and get it out. And I got it out before his surgery. I was able to show it to him. So I was very proud and happy I was able to get it out. So my advice would be just to try to schedule an hour to yourself, write down your idea, try to map out what you want and what you need to do next, whether it's finding an agent or a publisher, or going the self-published route, to read the steps to do that. You really just sitting down and trying to figure out the next steps and get it done.
I would say for me, I really wouldn't have anything to add other than what you ladies have already shared. For me, it was just a whole different shift. My first or my debut book was a nonfiction memoir, The Journey of Faith and an Open Heart. And so that was a 20 years in the making book. The children's book is something I did together with my daughters, just to kind of get the story out there. That helped my daughter when she was little and during hospital stays. What I would say though is that I had my daughter in the 90s, in the early 90s, and so there wasn't Facebook. There wasn't a way to connect with other people. There weren't resources out there. You didn't meet any of the 1 in 100 kids unless you happened to be stationed next to somebody in the hospital at the same time. A lot of the procedures she had when she had them were brand new or cutting edge, or one in particular, she was the first ever to receive it. And so, these resources out there, these children's books that everybody, that you guys have beautifully put together, I say, oh my gosh, I wish I had these when my daughter was little. I wish we had the resources and the stories that you guys have put out there. And so that being said, if somebody's thinking about putting another children's book together, write what and that's what they always say, write what you know, and that will be helpful to somebody else who is going through the same thing. We need more books. We love them.
Okay, so the next question is, as your children get older and have to deal with dating and peer pressure, how can you raise a confident warrior to rock his or her CHD scar? And I would say for me, well, my son's surgery was a little different too. He had a thoracotomy, so it's like in his back area, so it's not typical like down the middle of your chest. So I would say he forgets that it's even there a lot of times, honestly, because he's just a normal kid. And I think sometimes it's different for boys than it is for girls, just the way the world is. But I would just tell your child that what they have is beautiful. Their scar tells a story. It tells a journey that they've been on, and it's a beautiful one. All the things that they have been through and fought against, and just got knocked down, but they got back up again, and they continue to do amazing things. And I just think it's kind of a cool reminder of that. I would tell them to look at it as a blessing, that they were able to have a surgeon that was skilled to help them medically, and just use it to tell their story, and give hope to others. And don't be ashamed of it. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Everybody goes through difficult things, and that is just a reminder of how strong they are. So that's what I would say. Next, I'll leave it to Nisha.
Yeah, and again, this is my daughter. She's 4, and so I think about this every single day. As every day passes, I know she's getting older and more aware of her body, and what other people will say. Even I have that anxiety already of her going to school, and because hers comes pretty high up, so you can see it out of a t-shirt or sweatshirt or a dress. And so I think I'm just going to try my best. One of the quotes that I really love that kind of circulates is like, your scar means that you survived. And so that's one thing that I always want to teach her, is that scar is, it's really important. It means something. It means that, yes, you went through something or continue to go through something so pivotal and so difficult, but it means that you're strong and you're brave, and that you survived, and that you are surviving. And also, trying to be an advocate for her and for other kids. I hope that she's inspired also to do that for, other kids as well. And I hope that she, instead of, not liking her scar or not embracing it, I hope that she can, have that personality to kind of use it to help other kids, you know. And it may not be CHD, a CHD scar, it may be something else, but I hope that she could use that, you know, to relate to other kids or other teens or other adults who are going through something difficult, and kind of give her, you know, another purpose in a sense. And I don't ever want her to feel like her scar is like her whole life, right? Or that CHD is who she is. It's just going to be one tiny aspect of her. And I just hope that she's able to channel that into a positive message, not only for herself, but for her community of friends. And, you know, family members, even she has lots of, you know, tons of little cousins running around that none of them have a scar. And so I think, you know, I just hope that she never becomes like a target for anything like that, because then that would be another learning lesson or thing that we'd have to explain and kind of go through. And so, yeah, I just really hope that she embraces it. I'm sure that's not going to happen all the time. And I hope that I have the proper words and the proper phrases to kind of explain it to her, so she can shift that mindset if she ever has that. But I'm just going to raise her to be strong about it, and to really use it as something inspirational for herself and also for others.
Very similar. My son is 4. We are trying to teach him to be proud of his scar and of what it represents, of how strong he had to be, and how he continues to have to be strong. And has a very strong personality, so we want him to take that confidence and into not just situations with his heart and different and medical issues, but just into life, to being confident throughout life. You've been through so much already, you can really get through anything. He actually brought his Super Scar book to school, his preschool, and he read it to his class, because little kids are curious, they don't really have a filter. They might say, what's that? And after he read it, his teacher told me, the kids all, they said, oh, like, that's so cool, I like your Super Scar, like, from the book. And I think just opening that dialogue there, the kids are curious, and we explained it in the book. It was in a very simple way, but yes, his heart was different. He had surgery, now he has this scar, and he was proud to tell them about it, which as a parent, as an author, that made me so proud. But taking this confidence from it into the rest of his life, into other situations, not just hard situations, I think that helps a lot.
Can you hear me now? Could you hear anything before? No. Okay. I'll start over. Sorry about that. So with my daughter, I'll take the first part of the question, which has to do with how did you handle dating and peer pressure? And I would say we did not we did it like anybody else would. It was no different in terms of how we handled peer pressure or dating with our heart healthy child versus our heart warrior. The things that come up at school, and this may feel foreign or sound foreign, but some of the things that if you haven't had a kiddo there yet, but some of the things that we dealt with at school, the actual CHD part of attending school or being around peers felt like not complicated, because it was pretty straightforward. And most kids understand with a simple answer. I think as parents we worry a lot more than kids do. But my daughter quickly found another child in school when she first started kindergarten, and she was she had cystic fibrosis, and she had a different condition that resulted in her wearing a big brace on her leg, and she eventually had to have her leg amputated. And they kind of like bonded together, but they were also kind of like the little power duo at school. They were the ones who always had the cool parents on the field trips because we chaperone everything. They were the ones who brought all the neat cupcakes, and all those other special things. And so they were known as the kids who had different things going on, but that's not what kids knew them for. And so what they knew them for really had nothing to do with that. It was all these other things that they had going on about them. When she got older and, boys came into the picture, like I said, it's no different than any other daughter. And so my husband handled that a little bit better than I did, because he said, here's the rules. This is what's going to happen. This is what's not going to happen. And that was that. And as far as the last part of the question and her scar now, I don't know if we really just didn't. There were just so many other things. I think kids have a natural curiosity, like, oh, this is my scar, but wait, why does my hand look like this compared to your hand? And how come my hair's brown and your hair's red? And how come this and how come that? And so when you give them their explanation, they're really pretty accepting of it. And I found most of their peers have been too. And for even just, I'll carry that over to like sports. My daughter wasn't able to play sports, but we sort of normalized that with neither was I. And it was just because I had two left feet, no coordination, so that always helped a little bit. And I have a big scar on my arm. My hand went in a Ringer washing machine when I was just a little girl, old fashioned. That probably ages me a little bit that we actually had one in our house, but it left a huge scar on my arm. And so it was easy to be like, oh yeah, no, here's mine. That's yours. Oh, look, your dad has one here from, this or that. And your sister has one on her knee from when she tripped the hurdle at track. And we all just have scars for different things. Yours was just for kind of a bigger thing. And that's how we handled it. But the big thing is that your kids, and not to doubt yourself, because you know what they need as a mom and a dad. Your babies. And so trust, your own self. You're going to meet their need just like you would any other need, and you're going to do a great job.
All right. So I think we answered all the questions. Let me just double check. And there were some really sweet comments. Thank you so much, everybody. We really, really appreciate you guys tuning in and joining us. And thank you for being patient. I've never done anything like this before. And so I know there were some hiccups. And I will work on getting our video of the readings re-uploaded so that hopefully there's no weird movements going on and you can see how awesome they are. These authors have written such amazing stories. So if you haven't purchased one of their books, I suggest you guys do, just to have as a keepsake for your heart warrior and your family. And I hope that our reading has helped inspire the heart warriors and their families and help them realize how special that they truly are. One last thing before I'm done talking is I made some activity sheets for the heart warriors. They're just like little family activities, or there's like search and find, crossword puzzles. If you go on my website, which I can post, it's just www.carlivalentine.com. If you subscribe at the bottom of my homepage, I will get your email. If you do want these, I can send them to you. I'm just going to include it with whoever subscribes because I'll know. So that's the best way for me to figure out who wants them sent to them. And I appreciate so much of you guys for watching our Brave Hearts book reading, and hopefully I'll get better and next year I'll be like awesome at this and I can run it with no problems. But I just appreciate your patience and thank you for tuning in. And if the authors want to kind of finish up and say anything, I'll let them take the floor.
I want to thank Carli for putting this together. This was wonderful.
Yes, I mean, I want thank you too. You've done such a good job. All of you have amazing books, and I can't wait to read the couple ones that I haven't so far. Yours is on the way, Carly, and this is just awesome. You all have such a great energy about you, and thank you so much for hosting. It's been a pleasure.
I just want to thank you too as well, Carly. Thank you so much for inviting us to be a part of this beautiful event. And I look forward to next year and hopefully seeing new books out there. And thank you to everybody who took the time to join the live, and hopefully all the little heart warriors and maybe other kids that's sitting around listening to the books. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
All right, so that concludes our 2022 Braveheart book reading. Thank you guys for joining, and check back for a newly uploaded video that works a lot more smoothly. Thank you. Good night.